time today, so we didn't bring the bass boat out. I always hear it from everybody. Well, you got a bass boat, you're lucky you can get to all the fish. You can still catch a lot of fish from shore. I'll give you a couple pointers today. I'm at the local lake. It's just a little place, not much more than a pond really. Has a heavy weed edge. We're in late spring here. Bass are starting to get on their nest. All I brought with me was a Wacky rig Senko. Just hooks, a couple Wacky rig Senkos. All we're gonna do is focus on the inside weed edge. Just make a cast right to that inside edge, and you're gonna wait. A lot of times you'll see that line just jump a little bit. If not, we're gonna make another cast, because they're gonna hit it 9 times out of 10 on that first drop. So we just keep moving, we locate them. Once we locate them, we just keep repeating. One of the most important parts is to have that polarized sunglasses, so you can see right where that weed line is and make an accurate cast. And I'm just watching my slack line that's laying on top of the water for any movement, because a lot of times on these Wacky rigs you won't feel the hit. You'll just see that line jump. If it's real windy, it's kind of tough to feel, and you won't be able to see that line jump. We're just going to keep making casts right to the inside. That was a perfect cast there. You can see there's a clean cut edge for that weed. And we're just going to keep covering water. They'll group up. They're not all going to be spread out. They'll group up. If you find one, there'll be more than one in that spot. Sometimes you won't even feel the hit. You won't see it if that light's not right on your line. So if you go to move it, it feels heavy. Give it a little bit of a jerk. See if you can see if there's a fish on it. Been too many times I've thought it's a weed. Try to pull it loose from the weed and end up missing a fish. If in doubt, set the hook. Hook sets are free. So far we don't have any bites in this spot, so I'm going to move pretty quick. I'm not going to waste any time. One nice thing about a Wacky rig worm, it doesn't get stuck much. It's extremely easy, extremely cheap, and there's very little bass that pass it up. If you put it in front of a bass, they're going to eat it 9 times out of 10. You can fish it in shallow water like this. You can fish it in deeper water. This water is fairly clear. It's probably 2-3 foot of visibility. I haven't been to this lake in a while. It's possible the bass are moving off of their beds already. Not sure where they're at in their cycle here. It's also cloudy today, which means they're going to be a little shallower than they would be if it was a bright sunny day. If it was a bright sunny day, they're going to bury themselves into that weed a little bit deeper. If that's the case, you might have to switch to a Texas rig, or even a frog. As this weed gets a little thicker, you might have to throw a frog over the top of that weed. try to get into those fish. But when it's cloudy like this, they should be coming that inside edge, sitting there waiting for an easy meal. I picked this spot because this weed edge here it's a heavy weed edge, but the weeds aren't real thick because the water drops off pretty quick. So on the outside edge of these weeds, you have 15 feet of water, and the weed won't grow that deep here. So it concentrates the fish compared to a giant weed bed in a bay. Like say down the end of this lake, there's a big bay down there that's just nothing but weeds, but there's no depth change, so you won't get the concentration of fish in a small area that you do here. The other important thing to notice is it's right towards the end of the day. The sun's getting low. It's been cloudy all day. This is one of my favorite times to do this. Just a quick walk down the shore. The fish get more active as we get closer to dark here. And this is something that anybody can do. It's just a simple size 1 hook. I use the Gamakatsu wide gaps, or 5-inch. This is the Bass Pro Shop Senko style worm. Kids can do this. I've even with a kid used a bobber over the top of this. Set it 2-3 feet down. Fish it the same way, but that way they have a bobber so they can feel better when they get a fish bite. Sometimes they don't quite have the patience to sit there and wait to feel a bite. So the bobber makes it a little easier. Oop, just missed one there. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but my line you can see the line tick and pull tight. When I said it, I had a little weight there, but he came off pretty quick. I don't think he had the hook. Pretty hard to see the line. Just a little too far and I got into those weeds, and they are thick. The other thing you'll notice is I'm not throwing directly in front of me. I'm throwing on an angle a little bit in the direction I'm heading, so that if the fish are shallow, they're not seeing me as quick because I'm not directly in front of them. And you can play with your angle a little bit if it's getting hard to see. Your sunnies on every one of these nests sitting here. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nests from right where I'm standing. there's a fish. Just a little guy to get us started. That's not a bad fish to start the day. One thing I always like to do is see if they're eating anything. Sometimes you can see crawfish antennas or a tail in their mouth, and I'll give you a lot of clues on what they're eating. Got a knot in my line. One thing you won't see too many people do with a Wacky rig Senko is throw it out over the top of the weeds. As soon as it hits, keep that rod tip high, shake it, and you can actually drag that over the top of the weeds just like you would a frog or a rubber rat or anything like that. And then all you do is when you get to the edge, just stop, let it drop. So a lot of times you'll get their attention as you're coming over the top of the weeds, and they'll be tracking it as you hit the edge, and you kill it and you let it drop, they'll eat it. Now we're gonna let it drop. You'll notice I don't do much of a retrieve with these. With a Wacky rig, when I'm short fishing like this, there's a very small bite window. You're going to make that pitch, you're going to let it sink. Watching that slack line. There's a tick. There's a fish. Oh, that's a decent one. Good bass. That's a good bass. That's a nice one for here. Oh, look at that. There's two more falling. I don't know if you can see that. There's two more bass following that big one. See what I mean about clusters like that? What we'll do is we'll get this big one off, and we'll see if we can catch some small ones. Well, that is a nice fish for here. That's a good 2.5 pound fish. Look at that. That is a nice fish. Alright, just a quick little wrap up here. Just wanted to get out for a quick fishing trip. Show you guys it is possible to catch a lot of bass without the fancy bass boat, the live scope, the down imaging, the side imaging. Yes, I have all that, and it is great. But sometimes it also takes the fun out of fishing. This was one of my favorite ways to fish. Leave the boat at home, forget the hassle, throw one bag of Senkos in my pocket, one pack of hooks, carried one rod with me. I didn't retie the whole trip. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but I didn't retie the whole trip. Used 2 worms, just walk the shoreline, fish that inside weed edge, throw right to the edge of the weeds or just over the top of the weeds. Bring it back. When it hits that edge, let it drop right down that edge of the weeds. 9 times out of 10, they're going to hit it on that first initial fall. If you don't get a bite within the first minute, pull it, throw again. Pull it, throw again. Keep fishing that edge. Pay attention to what the bait's doing when they eat it. Is it laying on the bottom? Is it falling? And try to replicate that.